Welcome to the C-Suite podcast with me, Graham Barrett. I'm here in Frankfurt for Sibos, the global financial services event. We're producing these episodes in partnership with Kyndryl, who run and reimagine mission-critical technology systems that drive advantage for the world's leading businesses. I'm going to be sitting down here on Kyndryl's booth with some of the speakers and attendees to get a real snapshot of the main talking points of the event. Really hope you enjoy the show. I'm here now with Khaliq, who is the global leader at Kyndryl Vital. So Khaliq, well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting us on your booth here at Sibos. We've had some brilliant conversations with the guests already, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the main issues being spoken about at the conference. But maybe, if you don't mind, you could start with an introduction to Kyndryl and Kyndryl Vital.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much for joining us. Maybe I tell you a little bit about Kyndryl first. Kyndryl is the world's largest mission-critical systems management company. And of course, that's our heritage. Vital is a growing part of Kyndryl, which is focused on experience transformation and everything that our customers see and feel and how they deal with their customers is what we're trying to help them evolve.
Now, when it comes to customer experience, what do you see as the most transformative ways that AI could potentially help banks and financial institutions?
It's actually, AI is changing the world and how we interact with the world. And we have this mantra of, if you try to do mess for less, you just get faster mess. So when it comes to AI, I think a lot of people are trying to use AI to just automate and to accelerate processing. That's not how we see things. So from our perspective, we see AI as a transformative technology, and it actually helps you process things in context. So if you can remember that, when it comes to experience, it is completely changing the way you deal with systems. For the first time, rather than taking human input and trying to deliver it through a system, you're taking system output and trying to humanize it. And that requires a completely different way of thinking, a completely different way of delivery, a completely different way to present it to the user so that it's without bias, in context, and has the impact that you want it to have.
Now, clearly, the promise of AI is enormous. There are, you've just highlighted some of the ways that can really transform banks and financial institutions, but there are inherent risks as well, aren't there? So how do banks ensure that things like ethical considerations, fairness, are still paramount and still toppermost of mind when introducing these systems?
Very, very interesting question. And it's actually one that I think every company is dealing with, not just financial institutions, but it impacts financial institutions most presently and apparently. So when you think about AI and the impact it has, AI is a model that helps you create automation by learning from previous examples, previous processes. Now, of course, that opens itself up for bias. Right? It opens up itself bias in both directions. So the way that I believe that financial institutions need to deal with it is to create a framework which has the do's and don'ts, and then within that framework to let your system learn. And that's exactly what we have created in our second generation of the Kyndryl AI framework. We have set up the foundation for setting the rules that are non-negotiable. These could be regulatory, this could be the company's internal policies, could be cultural, and then on top of that, we allow the system to learn and adapt. And that gives you a very powerful tool, a very easy way to manage your processes dynamically, but still within that freedom and that framework together.
But this is all completely new ground, isn't it? Some of these technologies have never been employed at the scale that they are at the moment, and they are going to continue to be in the future. So again, how should that be managed within banks? How can they scale up these technologies while still maintaining security, fairness, all those things you just mentioned?
I think AI in some form has been there in banks for quite some time. So if you look at banks like HSBC, they use voice for authenticating. If you look at the US market, processing checks through pictures of the check is very, very common, so OCR. So there are different forms of AI that's been around for a while. But what has not been there, which is I think the most pertinent question of today, is AI to process and automate every single transaction or every single process that you have across the bank. Now, of course, as I was saying earlier, it opens itself up for bias. Also, scaling has the question around how do you make sure that it is financially viable and still safe and does not allow for the bias to come in. And when you start looking at all those three perspectives, I think you get very quickly into the specialized space of which model best suits each example. And one of the elements of our framework that I think is absolutely essential is to not only look at the capability of the LLM, but also to look at the financial viability. So we've reintroduced the concept of viable, feasible, and reliable, matching those three things together to create an answer which is correct for the financial institutions.
But when talking about transformation, I guess it comes down to not just the technology itself, the culture of the company, the mindset, making sure you don't enter into a box-ticking exercise, you're not just doing things for the sake of it, or going over old ground when the data's not clean or all the rest of it. So what advice do you have on that score?
I think the question that I get very frequently is, AI is changing both sides of the coin, what the customers see and what the employee has to do. It would be a horrible situation to call an employee who has less information than what the customer sees on the web or on the digital channels. So we are definitely automating and using AI tools for both sides. The term that I commonly use with my clients is, you have to use AI to teach people how to use AI. It's your companion through the journey. And you have to do that both for your employees and your customers, right? Because as your customers' model matures, as they understand more of the financial terms, as they understand more of their financial health and what it takes, their decisions will change. And so you need to constantly also educate your employee on every case that they deal with similarly.
So obviously the focus is going to be on the technology itself, but yeah, there's going to be that evolution, isn't there, in terms of how your workforce are going to be able to interact with the technology, agentic AI and all the rest of it. So yeah, that's certainly got to be as important as the technology itself, would you say? Absolutely.
And I think depending on whose paper you read, there's a lot of disagreement on the total impact of AI across the different jobs.
Yeah.
But when it comes to financial institutions, the impact is uneven like everywhere else. But when it comes to that manual processing, a lot more is augmented than autonomous automation.
Yeah.
And that's actually the right thing as we build confidence, as we evolve and learn to use the technology, as we evolve the models. I think it's the right starting point.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's that augmentation, as you say. Yeah, that's probably the correct word there. Well, Khaliq Khan, thank you so much again. It's been great hosting these conversations on your booth, and thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you very much for joining us, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, delighted to say that I've been joined here at Sibos by Paul Gillen, who is Group Chief Security Advisor at Barclays. Paul, very nice to meet you and see you.
Great to meet you too.
Yeah.
Really fantastic, yeah. I'm having a good time.
Yeah, well, you've been a busy man, haven't you?
Yeah, I was busy. I only come in for 24 hours, so it's been a bit hectic. It started off with my flight being delayed, losing my luggage, and when I went to the hotel, I had no booking.
Oh.
So that was really fun, although I did manage to get my clothes, as you can see.
Yeah. A hat trick of calamities.
I'm not sure what else I did yesterday that could have gone wrong, so I'm sure if it did, but I had to buy a lotto ticket afterwards.
Well, absolutely. But one thing you did right was your session here at Sibos, I'm sure, which was around the future of financial cybersecurity, wasn't it? Fascinating topic. Yeah. How do you assess the current threat landscape? What do you see maybe as the top 3 threats to Barclays at present?
That's a good question. So I've never seen the threat landscape to be worse, actually, I would say. I'd say it's probably at its worst. Certainly from my perspective, I'm also the independent non-executive director chair of the Cyber Defence Alliance in London. So that's an alliance of 13 financial institutions. So between us all, we would have a pretty good look at exactly what the threat landscape is. And I would say if I had to pick only three, I would say ransomware for sure. Ransomware, in either attempting to direct it against ourselves and the financial institutions, but mainly directing it against third-party suppliers. So I would say that's probably, I think the term is, the conventional term is head and shoulders, but I think it's head, shoulders, torso and legs above pretty much everything else, I would say. Then next biggest thing is probably, the third-party suppliers. We all depend on third-party suppliers where, they're ingrained in many of the processes that we do in our organizations. They're critical to them and critical to us delivering services to customers and clients. We saw at the weekend, you looked at all the airports and the massive queues. I got caught up myself. I took a photograph in Dublin Airport, and it was like somebody had sounded the 4-minute warning and they didn't tell me. Wow. Everybody was in the airport and bags, and nobody knew what to do. But there is, and nobody in the airport, got up that morning and thought this is what's going to happen by 5 p.m. this evening. So so that kind of thing. So that was the second thing. And then I would say targeting by nation states. Obviously, we're living in a geopolitically tense times, I think it's probably fair to say, between all the various different conflicts in the world, and you're seeing threat actors then using or abusing technology in an effort to cause disruption to their perceived enemies. I think that's probably the best way. So I'd say if I was to pick three, that's ransomware, third parties, nation state targeting is the one you're probably most scared of because their capability is so strong.
Absolutely. Well, that's a hefty three. It really is quite frightening. And I think what's quite frightening as well is the degree of inevitability that you just spoke about. Now, there have been a number of high-profile cyber attacks on British companies. Is it inevitable? What can be done? What tactics have you employed at Barclays?
I don't want to be kind of a doomsday kind of naysayer, but as you say, there is certainly a degree of inevitability that somewhere you're going to have a partner or a third-party supplier that's embedded in a critical process that you're offering to your clients. I don't mean just in the bank, I mean to any company, and that relationship is going to go wrong, or they may not have a cybersecurity posture that's equivalent to your own, and they may let you down, and if they let you down, then a critical process in your organization may fall. Is there a degree of inevitability about that? I think at this stage you'd nearly have to say yes. Well, can it be avoided? Yeah, for sure you can avoid it. And say, if you look at large financial institutions, we were investing, a dozen years ago for the threat landscape that exists today. Sure. And, that investment has, paid off for us. I'm touching wood here. Actually, nobody can see this, but, probably the most timbers in my head, but we certainly invested a dozen years ago to upgrade our cybersecurity posture to go from being a reactive organization, where something happens, you react, even if you react gracefully to it. That's not really a position you want to be in. So we're investing, we invested in it. I think it's got to the stage now where the threat landscape has changed so much, and we're reading about so many various different attacks in the media. It's now the time for organizations to realize that doing a root and branch review of your cybersecurity posture, making sure, to use that term, you get all the dead cats onto the table, everything that's wrong in the organization, just get it onto the table and, itemize it and give yourself an opportunity to remediate it in a constructive and organized way, and make sure that the board is on the journey, not just don't leave it to the poor old CISO. They're hard pushed enough to defend the organization. Get the board to give support to CISO, I would say, is probably a piece of advice I would give to companies.
Sure, and I guess from an AI perspective, that is just ramping up the threat even more. How concerned are you about, how more sophisticated, more advanced these attacks can get? I
would say generative AI has probably been the single biggest facilitator of certainly cyber-facilitated fraud, without a shadow of a doubt. So whatever it is you need to do, whether that's voice cloning, deep fake videos, production of identification documents, you can put into, I don't mean ChatGPT, but something like FraudGPT, where you put in, give me documentation that proves that my company, which is widgets.com, has been in existence for 20 years and I'd like 1,000 of them. You'll get 1,000 of them and they'll be perfect. Know your customer, deepfake voice cloning. I do a lot of research in Barclays, and we start to look at, can we use deepfake voice cloning to bypass voice recognition security software? Can we use deepfake videos to bypass other types of know your customer type tooling? So we're looking at that all the time. So I would say generative AI, for me, that's me personally, that's Paul Gillen, not necessarily Barclays, but for me personally, I think it's been the biggest facilitator, has lowered the bar to entry to cyber facilitated fraud to people that heretofore wouldn't have had the skill set in order to effectively engage in it.
Now, one way we could potentially fight back is going down the regulation route, NIS2 potentially. What are your thoughts on that side of things? Do you think that can have an impact?
Speaking of NIS2, I think, to be honest, any type of, if the world is in a state where we're all sitting waiting for that attack to see if we're going to fall victim to it or not, having good regulation that outlines what good security looks like for people who have not traditionally concentrated on security and having what you call an advanced cybersecurity posture. Having something like NIS2 for organizations that are covered in it that provide critical services to us as a society, and forcing us to upgrade our security to meet standards, that has to be a good thing. Because if we're on boards on, for example, I'm a non-executive director on 3 companies. I was selected on one company because they had a board review and nobody in the board had any cybersecurity experience, cyber risk experience, and cyber risk was the number one risk in the organization. It had surpassed liquidity risk for the first time. So me coming onto the board and then saying, okay, so what are we going to do? How are we going to make sure that we're compliant? But having me personally liable under regulation certainly does focus the mind, doesn't it? That, so if you have to make an attestation, and if the attestation is subsequently incorrect, and you cannot prove that you went through a process that made sure that you were compliant with NIS2, then shame on you then, basically, So, but if you're able to prove that you had a program in place, the program took into consideration your compliance with the directive, you are able to show the workings of your program, and then anything, even if it does go wrong after that, at least you're in a position to demonstrate that you did all that was humanly possible. So I have to say it's a good thing. It'll certainly focus people's attention, certainly people on board's attention, that's for sure.
But it's putting a lot of pressure on the individuals and the organisations, in a wider kind of perspective. Well, listen, Paul Gillen, I really appreciate you taking us through that.
Not at all.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
To see you, and thanks for inviting me.
No, anytime. We'll see you at an event soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, pleased to say that I'm here with Imke Jacob, who is General Executive Manager at DZ Bank. Imke, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. Now, you spoke on a session, didn't you, here at Sibos, I think it was yesterday, called Payments Amplified. How could AI revolutionise the payments ecosystem? No surprise that AI was in the title there. So where do you see AI having the biggest impact in the finance landscape?
AI is everywhere, right?
Of course.
So when we talk about payments, let's not forget that in the core of payments, we are talking about operations. So it's highly automated. I mean, the straight-through processing rate is above 99%. Right. So obviously AI comes into play for the rest, the 1%, which sounds minor, but I mean, we are talking about millions, billions of transactions, and then 1% actually matters. The process steps where we still have kind of manual intervention is around fraud detection, sanction screening, and those AI is and will going to play a pivotal role. On top, I mean, everybody's talking about customer centricity and innovation and agentic AI, and there, even in payments, although it's more operation, it is going to matter now, but even more in the future, I would say. Yeah.
Well, on that point, let's talk about the future. Do you see this as being a gradual process where AI comes into businesses relatively slowly, or is it suddenly going to explode and grow exponentially over the next few years?
I would describe it rather an evolution rather than a revolution. Why? I mean, AI is a piece of a puzzle. And I'm with DZ Bank, the second largest bank in Germany, but it's a bank, so we are a tanker with a lot of legacy, as everybody else. And AI needs to be integrated in processes, needs to be integrated in our IT landscape and the architecture. And we need people. don't forget the people in terms of we need to get them on board using AI, using ChatGPT or the internal versions of it. And that's why it will take time.
That's a big piece of it, isn't it? The hybrid workforce of the future, as one of the other guests said on the podcast.
It is. And there it's a kind of, well, everybody is kind of trying. I mean, everybody is kind of faced with AI in the private side of life. Because if you Google, you don't even recognize whether it's AI or not, and actually you don't care. But on the business side, there's still the portion of people that are a little bit afraid of using AI, being afraid of their own workplace being lost. And then on the other side, we have the ones who are super keen and interested and want to use it and are asking for more and more and more. As an employer, you have to balance both, but you need both. And that's why it's one of the biggest challenges. And all together makes it, well, it will take time. I think it will take time more, or it's more an evolution on the operational side. On the customer-facing side, we will see here and there some really revolutionary stuff, I would expect, just to win the payment side, because the payment landscape at the moment is highly competitive. So whatever you can do to have this distinctive, unique selling point, everybody's going for it.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. So what specifically then, in terms of those use cases, where could AI really help to drive the business forward? Do you see any particular use cases, or is it kind of just a general AI innovation?
So I think what we see right now and what is going to be important in the future is, as I said, it's fraud and sanction screening. And they are, well, heavily linked to everything regarding cyber and risk. Yep. For cyber, I mean, it's kind of, you do professional sports and doping, you feel like a cat and mouse. You're always kind of a step behind. So there we need to keep up actually with all the cyber risk out there. So this is the one piece. On the customer-facing side, talking about corporate clients, it's about liquidity management, working capital optimization, where if you link AI to all the treasury systems everybody is using, it can be a huge step change for the financial departments of the corporate clients. For the private customers is being smarter and doing transactions. I mean, if we look, for example, at cross-border, there's huge potential to increase the usability and the customer experience. And everything linked to more embedded finance, I think, is going to be important going forward. This kind of payment is going to be embedded or even invisible, because nobody likes to pay anything. I mean, they like to buy, but they don't want to pay. And there actually we see, I think, the biggest innovations going forward.
Yeah. I guess it comes back to that whole frictionless kind of question, doesn't it? Whether we need a little bit of friction in some payments to make us aware that we're buying something of a high value, but we're also after that speed as well. So it is a bit of a balancing act, isn't it?
It is. And as a bank, of course, you need to make sure that the customers do understand what they are doing. Because embedded finance is the link between the finance side, so the credit side of it, and the payment side. For the customer, it feels like I'm buying something, so I pay. But in our systems, it's actually a credit. And there we are talking about real credit risks. So this needs to be balanced, that on the one hand, we achieve the customer experience we would like to have, but on the other hand, we do our homework when it comes to our own processes, operational models, and risk models.
And just finally finish up, you mentioned cross-border payments there, so we're keen to pick up the conversation around there. With AI embedded into cross-border payments, what's that going to look like in, I know it's hard to say even a year ahead, but maybe 3 or 5 years ahead? Is it going to be completely transformed, unrecognizable from today, do you think?
In 5 years, if you talk about the customer journey, I think there will not be, perhaps not even an app anymore. So you use your agent saying, I would like to do a transfer. And then you don't say it has to be a cross-border payment or not, because actually as a customer, you don't care. Of course. So you tell your agent, please do it. And then the agent is going to ask, okay, is it urgent, or do you want to wait for the best offer? And then actually there is a kind of prediction model in the back that looks at FX rates, whatever is the best timing to really do it. So you have the best conversion rates and the best costs. And then you would see perhaps even a kind of map, like a flight tracker, where you can actually, this is what you can do right now already, where you see actually your payment flying around the world. This is perhaps how it could look like. I mean, at the moment, to be honest, it's a very expensive, manual, non-customer friendly process. For banks, to be honest, still with high margins. This is going to change.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting what you say about, because we think, well, everything's got to get quicker and quicker, but it might be that we tell our agents, as you say it, hey, why don't we just hold off a minute, and that could actually make the transaction slower, bizarrely.
Exactly. And this is where instant payment is going to help us, because we can decide.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll track those developments as they go forward. Imke, Jacob, it was so kind of you to join us on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, pleased to say that I've been joined now by Roger Burkhardt, who is Head of AI, Chief Technology Officer at Broadridge. Roger, welcome.
Thank you, Graham. It's really good to be here. It's an exciting venue, an exciting event, and look forward to talking about it.
Yeah, well, before we get into your session, which I know you've just come from, I just want to talk about your personal journey in a way, because you've been working in AI since the early 2000s, haven't you? So obviously a lot has changed in that time. But how do you see it evolving now? How's it being applied in financial services?
Yeah, I think, AI has been through winters and summers and springs. It really goes back to the 50s, as you know. I think the really big seminal event was, ChatGPT. And I actually think it was the chat interface that really was seminal there. It was a bit like the internet in 1994. All of a sudden, everyone in the world who could afford a computer could get access to data all over the world. Yeah. And with ChatGPT, anyone who could afford almost nothing, in fact, could have access to the most powerful models that were coming out. So I think the chat interface, in terms of democratization, the ability to roll it out, we've rolled out to all of our 15,000 associates. Yeah. It took something that used to be, part of the temple of data science priests, and it put it out there for everyone to use. And then the models themselves, really powerful, and getting more powerful every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's commonplace in most places of work nowadays, just for the average employee, if you like, just to use it for whatever the use cases might
Absolutely.
be.
Absolutely. 85% of our employees use
85.
it.
There you go.
And the statistics show that in organizations where they have lower percentages, if you dig deeper, people are using it on their private accounts, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So aside from your employees, how else are you using AI at Broadridge today?
Yeah, well, we're embedding it in all of our products and services. So we got out early. In June of 2023, we rolled out a product called Bond GPT, which was rolled out to corporate bond traders, and it allowed them to find which bonds to trade. And what they found was that it was much more productive than the traditional market data vendor screens. These are well-paid people. They all have a Bloomberg, right? They have the Rolls-Royce terminal. But they actually found that having a natural language interface was more powerful. And so we've taken that model and we've rolled it out through many, many of our products now. So if you need to get access to data, you don't have to hunt and peck. You don't have to know your way around arcane menus. And so that's one big thing that we've embedded in our products. The other thing I'd like to say is that it's not like Gen AI has replaced everything else and that everything that came before is no good anymore.
It's obsolete, no.
We have predictive models which are really, really powerful. I mean, one example would be in the asset management space. We collect data from asset managers about where they're selling what funds, about $100 trillion in assets. And we've done that for many years. We got the trust of our clients to share it with them. But what classic machine learning brought to the table was we now enable them to predict over the next 3 years which types of funds are going to grow and which are going to shrink. Yeah. So if you're the head of distribution or the head of strategy at an asset manager, you've now got a tool that can enable you to say, where do I invest? What products do I launch?
Absolutely, yeah. That degree of accuracy is going to be incredible, isn't it? So, well, let's broaden it out a little bit then. Aside from Broadridge, the wider financial industry, where do you see the best cases for AI nowadays?
Well, let me talk a little bit about the crowd we have here at Sibos, right?
Yeah,
so this is a crowd, a lot about payments, a lot about post-trade processing, and the operations teams are really large in all these banks, thousands and thousands of people. And they deal with a lot of exceptions. They deal with an awful lot of email. I was at a large bank the other day that said, we've still got a lot of faxes coming in. We can't stop people using faxes. And so where agentic AI is now helping is it's enabling them to automate the response so they can get answers back to clients more quickly, and they can cut through all the noise. And we build these systems partly by trial in our own BPO. So we have a 1,000-person BPO, and that BPO has found they get about a 50% productivity improvement in fails research, for example.
Okay.
And we've also found that we can cut through all the noise of these thousands and thousands and thousands of emails, work out which are duplicative, who to send them to, and then increasingly automate the response. So if you talk to operations leaders around here and ask them about email, they'll flinch because they'll say, I wish we didn't get it. Why are people sending us emails, but the clients do? And so using AI to make sense of that email and to pull out the high priority ones and to send it to the right person, it sounds very mundane. We're talking about thousands and thousands of people's work here.
Yeah. And what about the wider societal impact? So think about the workforce of the future, the hybrid workforce of the future, potentially. What is that going to look at? How do you imagine that kind of working out?
Well, it's a good point. We are the last management team to manage a human-only workforce, and that's a reality today. There's a lot of implications for how we create career paths for people. Stanford came out with a study recently that showed in 2024, 13% fewer programmers in the early 20s, even though the overall workforce was growing. And so one of the challenges is that those entry-level jobs are getting automated more quickly. And so we have to think about how do we provide new entry-level jobs and how to provide a career path so that people can learn, even just junior people, how do I manage a bunch of agents?
Yeah.
Right? Even a sort of first year programmer now has got to do code review. Whereas in the past, it'd be the seniors who are reviewing their code. Now the junior programmer has to review the agent's code.
Yeah.
So really, really big changes, and I think exciting changes, because I think in the main, we are automating the more mundane and repetitive stuff, and we're creating higher value roles.
Are there any risks? Are there any inherent challenges that you see in terms of managing this agentic workforce? How are we going to do that?
Alphabetically, yeah. I mean, the first thing is that large language models are non-deterministic. Give it the same inputs and you get different outputs.
Yes.
And then you have an agentic system that has 3 or 4 of them talking to each other. That doesn't make it any easier, right? So testing these things is really hard. Working about how much autonomy to give them, when to get a human in the loop is hard. But what I'd say is we need to have the courage to live and learn. We shouldn't take reckless risks, but the only way you learn how to do this stuff is by doing it, right? And that's something that we've done at Broadridge, and it's paid off for us.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to be thinking about this as a tool, if you like, something that's going to, improve in all the areas that you've just outlined, rather than something that we have to, be too considerate of. Do you know what I mean there?
Yeah, no, I think that these are pieces of software. We don't have to worry about their feelings.
No, exactly.
We still need employees who do care about humans' feelings. I mean, I think the soft skills are going to become increasingly important. The notion that you can get a great career by sitting in a cubicle and coding away on your own, that's not really going to be a great path. So I think the soft skills are very important. But no, I'm not one of these people who worries about the AI bot's feelings. I think that we've got more important things to worry about than that.
But yeah, it's going to be so interesting to see all the implications. And I hope to sit down with you at a future event and chat through how things are progressing. But for now, Roger Burkhardt, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you.
Okay, well, with the recent acquisition of Virgin Money by Nationwide Building Society, we thought this was an ideal opportunity here at Sibos to bring together those two companies and two of the sharpest minds from those companies. So delighted to say I've got Isabel Pitt, Deputy Payments Director at Nationwide Building Society, along with Louisa Dall, who is Head of Payment and Treasury Systems at Virgin Money. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is such a great opportunity.
No, that's all. This is great to have you here. Let's think about the technology enablers, as it were. Are we going to move towards interoperable payment rails, or are we looking at a future where there's more fragmentation? And what does that mean for how the whole landscape is going to play out?
So I think from an interoperability perspective, it's much easier in the domestic landscape than it is in the cross-border landscape. There's still quite a lot of friction in the cross-border landscape. We need to look more at standardisation. ISO 20022 will help that in delivering more benefits across that, from that perspective.
And I mean, look, let's face it, interoperability is the dream, right? You want customers to be able to go across the globe and not even think twice about how they're going to use their money, where they're going to pay and how they're going to pay, and be protected and secured. So that is the dream that we should all be moving to, but it's going to take all of us as an ecosystem across the globe to really facilitate that, and that is through standardization of ISO standards.
I think interoperability allows banks as well to interoperate between payment rails, which gives resilience from a technology perspective, which is really important.
And what about in terms of fraud detection as well? Is ISO going to have a huge benefit there as well, do you think? Start with you, Isabel.
Yeah, so look, I think there's three things that I think we're on a journey from an AI perspective, and ISO is that standardization, right? So you need to standardize the data. You need to be able to assess apples from apples rather than, having manually through spreadsheets, humans trying to decipher information. So I think being able to do that in real time and quickly is going to be huge. You need to then bring the data together, so a centralized location. And then to Louisa's point, you need to start slow, start small use cases, developing the engine and the brain. So from a fraud and financial crime perspective, I think we are definitely on a journey as an ecosystem in payments. We're definitely leveraging the ability to interrogate large volumes of data to see anomalies and reduce the volume of false positives for customers. So they're going to benefit from a better user experience. So we're going to challenge them when we think something's wrong, and then we're going to let the transactions pass when we know that they're right because we're able to.
Yeah, and I think picking up on some of that as well, we've got to look at where we started from, for example, confirmation of payee in the UK and how that's expanded out. That's started banks talking to each other about or sharing information, and I think banks typically have been quite poor at sharing information with each other. That started the journey, so we need to kind of develop and build on that from a fraud and financial crime perspective. And I think using something like that to give personalised messages to customers. I think the challenge with some of the fraud messaging is once you've had your message once, customers it's proven that customers tend to ignore that message. So I think from the perspective of allowing us to deliver a personalised service via AI for a customer with sort of specific warnings for customers is really important.
And can you share any specific use cases? It's always good to bring these issues to life, isn't it? And think about where AI is already delivering real benefits and payments. That might be in fraud detection, it might be in customer experience. What are your thoughts?
So I think AI at the minute is being used quite predominantly in terms of mapping out customer journeys. It's being used in my side of the fence, on the technology side. From a testing perspective, AI allows us to test faster and quicker and get products to market and to customers more effectively and much quicker than we traditionally have done. So it's definitely been used a lot in the testing.
And from my perspective, we are in partnership with Visa. It's very well known that we have leveraged their ability to use what they call smart steps, so they're able to, assess and again allow the transaction to proceed or not to in a much quicker time frame. So their decision rules come back quicker. We're able to respond better, and customers get a better experience. So through partnerships, we're starting to really accelerate our ability to leverage this as a tool day to day.
And I guess maybe just to finish up, in your respective fields, what areas are you most passionate about? What areas are you most excited about in the coming years?
I think it's how we can use AI and machine learning to really prevent fraud. We've touched on it a lot in this through this session, but it really is important to me. I think giving customers kind of that extra protection, which is what customers want. I think we continually talk about frictionless journeys, and I'm not sure that we entirely want frictionless journeys. I think we have to create some friction, but it's how we develop that from a customer benefit as opposed to friction where, traditionally it would have been in the kind of infrastructure build of end-to-end journeys, whereas now we're trying to do it to prevent fraud, etc., as we've talked about earlier.
I mean, it's such a good point around, the friction to not friction, being able to assess data at such a large scale for us to decipher when is the right place to put a friction in there, because customers need it in order to feel safe. A totally frictionless journey, they're going to drop out, they're not going to convert. So from that perspective, we want to make sure that we're learning, and the AI helps us to do that. Me personally, I'm really excited about the opportunity to be able to understand my customers better and what they need, so that I'm servicing them in a way that's meaningful to them.
Well, I'm glad to say there was no friction here today in our conversation, so it just leaves me to say, Isabel, Pitt, Louisa, Dall, thank you for joining me here at Sibos.
Thank you for having us.
I really hope you've enjoyed these conversations from Kyndryl's booth at Sibos here in Frankfurt. If you have enjoyed the show, then please do give us a positive rating or review on your podcast app of choice. And if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that via the contact form at csuitepodcast.com. You can find me, Graham Barrett, on LinkedIn. But for now, thank you for listening and goodbye.